You've been divorced for 7 years, maybe 9, and at some point, you can't name exactly when, you stopped saying, "I haven't found the right person," and started meaning something else entirely. You're not waiting anymore. You've built a life, your schedule, your quiet, your own terms. You know what you're coming home to. You know what time you'll eat, what you'll watch, when you'll sleep. And somewhere in all of that, you realized something you'd never said out loud. You don't actually want to go back. Not because you're bitter, not because the divorce was too painful, but because the version of you that came out the other side, the one who learned how to fill a weekend alone, who stopped expecting anyone to be there when you got home, that version doesn't recognize what going back would even mean anymore. This isn't failure. It's not loneliness in disguise. And it's not something you've explained to anyone. Because how do you explain a choice that doesn't feel like one? This isn't bitterness. It's not giving up. And it's not emotional damage, though that framing gets used a lot, especially by people who remarried quickly and need to believe that everyone eventually does. What it actually is what psychologists call autonomy restoration, the process by which the brain, after a significant loss of control, quietly reorganizes its reward system around independence. And for Gen X men, the story of how it happened starts decades before the divorce did. Here's why this is specific to Gen X. Between 1970 and 1985, the U.S. divorce rate doubled. Gen X children, born between 1965 and 1980, grew up watching their parents' marriages fail in real time. Roughly 40% of Gen X children experienced parental divorce before they turned 18. Not a family friend's divorce, their own. No-fault divorce was introduced in California in 1969 and normalized across all 50 states by 1985. Which means Gen X was the first generation to grow up with divorce as a default possible outcome. Not a scandal, not a tragedy reserved for other families, just a thing that happened, sometimes to theirs. And then Gen X grew up, got married, and between 1995 and 2015, many of those marriages ended too. Most Gen X men were in their 30s and early 40s when they divorced, old enough to have built something real, old enough for the loss to land hard, but also old enough to rebuild. And they did. They reorganized, they found routines, they figured out how to live in a space that was suddenly theirs alone. And over time, not dramatically, not all at once, they stopped treating that space as temporary. Here's why this is specific to Gen X. This generation didn't just experience divorce as adults, they grew up inside it. They watched it happen at close range before their nervous systems were finished developing. The brain that eventually went through its own divorce already had data on what happens when the structure of a home collapses. It had been here before. And it had a strategy. When Gen X children were growing up in unstable households, homes where a parent left, where the family structure collapsed without warning, where stability wasn't something anyone promised, the brain adapted. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting threat and managing reward, learned a new equation. Closeness equals eventual loss of control. That wasn't a decision, it was wiring, a predictable outcome of an environment that kept delivering the same data over and over to a brain that was still forming. Psychologists call the long-term result attachment avoidance, a pattern where the nervous system associates emotional vulnerability with danger, not because the person is broken, but because the evidence they collected in childhood pointed clearly in that direction. Then divorce happened, and the amygdala ran the same calculation it had been running since they were 8 years old, and it landed on the same answer. You can handle this alone. You always have. And so begins what psychologists call autonomy restoration, where autonomy stops being the default coping strategy and slowly, quietly becomes a preference. The brain reorganizes its reward system around self-sufficiency. Not consciously chosen, not decided one morning over coffee, just incrementally, invisibly, wired in. And for Gen X men, by the time they're in their 50s, the rewiring is thorough. The brain that once tolerated being alone now finds it genuinely comfortable. And the brain that once found partnership natural now finds the logistics of it, the compromise, the vulnerability, the constant low-level negotiation, not impossible, just not worth the cost. The research reflects this. Pew Research found that only 35% of divorced men over 50 remarry, compared to 52% of divorced women. And men who don't remarry within 5 years of divorce, less than 10% ever do. But here's the data point that matters most. A 2025 AARP study found that 40% of Gen X adults qualify as chronically lonely, and 68% of those adults describe themselves as preferring their current lifestyle. The gap between what the data shows, lonely, and what they report, fine, that's not denial. That's not a performance. That's autonomy restoration doing exactly what it was designed to do. It made the brain comfortable with something the numbers say should feel like deprivation. The numbers say they're missing something. The nervous system says they're not. So, how does this show up in Gen X men's lives today? The first way, dating without arriving. He goes on dates. He's not closed off. He's not running from anything obvious. But when things start to feel serious, when the other person starts to assume things, to plan things, to use the word we without checking, something shifts. The exit happens quietly, usually before the conversation does. He doesn't always know why. The knowing comes later, if at all. The second way, the I'm good script. Ask him about his love life, and the answer comes fast and finished. Not defensive, not sad, just closed. I'm good. Subject over. And the thing that makes people who love him crazy, he means it. He's not protecting a wound. The door is just shut, and he stopped noticing it years ago. The third way, over-investment in solo infrastructure, work, routines, hobbies that require no one else. These became load-bearing walls. He didn't build them to keep people out. He built them because they worked. And now, dismantling them for someone else, even someone he likes, even someone worth it, feels less like opening a door and more like demolishing a structure that took years to construct. The fourth way, the rising bar. There's an internal standard, unspoken and quietly rising, for what would make disrupting his life worth it. The longer he's comfortable, the higher it gets. It's not arrogance. It's not selfishness. It's math the nervous system is doing automatically, below the level of conscious thought. The calculation just keeps coming back to the same answer. Not yet. Not this one. The fifth way, the friendship substitute. Deep, consistent friendships, sometimes with other men, sometimes platonic, fill the relational space without the vulnerability that commitment requires. It works. It genuinely works. He's not isolated. He's connected on his own terms at a depth he controls, up to a point. Here's the hard part. Yes, it can change, but the more honest question, the one worth sitting with, is whether they want it to. The research doesn't say these men are broken, it says they adapted, intelligently. The adaptation worked. The question is whether it's still serving them or whether it's become the only mode they know. 3 things the research suggests actually move the needle. First, name the pattern, not as damage, as a choice that made sense at the time given what the environment kept teaching them. There's a difference between I prefer solitude and I've stopped believing closeness is survivable. Those feel identical from the inside, they're not. Second, the entry point isn't dating. It's rebuilding tolerance for vulnerability in low-stakes relationships first. A friendship that goes deeper than usual. A conversation you don't redirect. A moment where you let something land instead of processing it alone before anyone sees it. Third, separate the wiring from the decision. The nervous system will always run the old calculation. The goal isn't to silence it. It's to stop letting it be the only vote. The goal isn't to become someone who needs people. It's to stop letting a 9-year-old survival strategy make all the decisions for a 52-year-old man. If this video made you feel seen, subscribe. And tell me, if you never went back after divorce, when did alone stop feeling like something that happened to you and start feeling like something you chose?